What if the superheroes who inspired your favorite icons were erased from memory before they could save the day? The 1960s gave birth to daring masked vigilantes and cosmic warriors who fought not just villains, but censorship networks and studio chaos. Their stories shaped a generation yet vanished from mainstream history. Tonight, we resurrect those forgotten caped pioneers who redefined courage, imagination, and rebellion. Number 14, Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles, 1966. In the fall of 1966, the studio Hanna-Barbera Productions unleashed Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles, a Saturday morning double feature that disguised audacious superhero storytelling as light animated fun. One segment starred the towering robotic hero Frankenstein Jr., created by boy scientist Buzz Conroy and his father, Professor Conroy. The other followed a three-member rock band turned crime fighters called the Impossibles Multi-Man, Coil Man, and Fluid Man, who posed as musicians while secretly battling bizarre villains. Though visually playful, the show was ambitious. Networks worried that superpowers for kids might encourage reckless imitation. As a result, several episodes were edited or pulled from reruns after its original run. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera moved at breakneck pace. Episodes were produced rapidly, blending recycled animation loops with surreal storylines, especially in The Impossibles rock and roll cover. Critics dismissed it at the time as trivial fluff, but decades later, fans recognized the series as a precursor to the mashup of music, heroism, and meta-comedy found in shows like The Tick, and even some modern cartoons. This forgotten gem taught a generation that heroism didn't always wear a cape. It could wear sunglasses, play a guitar, and still save the day. Number 13, Mr. Terrific, 1967. Released the same year as Captain Nice, this CBS series mirrored its rival in uncanny ways. Stephen Strimple starred as Stanley Beamish, a timid gas station attendant who gains temporary super strength from a government pill. The concept mixed Cold War anxiety with whimsical science fiction, but the network treated it as disposable comedy. Producers clashed with sponsors who worried the pill plotline resembled drug use during a time of rising youth protests. CBS executives forced the writers to tone down scientific language and remove scenes referencing military experimentation. Episodes were reshot within days, often destroying continuity. What could have been a clever commentary on artificial heroism turned into a disjointed broadcast nightmare. Critics mocked it as shallow, while others quietly admired its subtext about dependency and government control. The stunt team faced repeated injuries during flying harness scenes, while the prop department ran out of funds halfway through production, forcing recycled footage. Viewers found it charming, yet strange. Ratings plummeted after 13 episodes. When later generations examined the show, they saw an accidental allegory. Mr. Terrific's powers faded after 1 hour, mirroring the fleeting optimism of an America drowning in doubt and war. It was a hero born from bureaucracy, destined to vanish in paperwork. Forgotten by most, yet strangely prophetic. Number 12, Ultraman, 1966. Across the Pacific, another superhero emerged not from satire, but sincere wonder. Ultraman exploded onto Japanese screens in 1966, redefining what televised science fiction could be. Created by Eiji Tsuburaya, the visionary behind Godzilla's effects, it followed an intergalactic being who bonds with a human scientist to protect Earth from monstrous kaiju. At first, broadcasters feared it was too violent for children. Japanese censors demanded that monster deaths be softened and explosions reduced. Yet its dazzling special effects and moral clarity captivated millions. Ultraman became a symbol of unity, courage, and technological hope. Behind the cameras, the crew worked under brutal conditions. Actors wore heavy latex suits that caused dehydration. The miniature city sets collapsed during takes, forcing last-minute improvisations. Still, the passion of Tsuburaya's team turned limitations into legend. When Ultraman reached American syndication, some scenes were cut entirely. Broadcasters misunderstood its tone-trimming moral lessons and focusing only on spectacle. Despite censorship, the series grew into an international cult movement, inspiring countless heroes from Power Rangers to Pacific Rim. Ultraman taught that true strength lies in compassion and sacrifice, not just power. It shaped a generation who saw monsters not as pure evil, but as reflections of human fear. Number 11, The Green Hornet, 1966. Long before superheroes became billion-dollar icons, the Green Hornet prowled television screens in 1966 as a masked vigilante without superpowers, but with unshakable resolve. Van Williams played Britt Reed, a newspaper publisher by day and crime fighter by night, while his partner Kato was portrayed by a young Bruce Lee, whose lightning-fast martial arts stole every scene. The show arrived during the campy era of Batman, yet it carried a darker tone that unsettled executives. Censors objected to its violence, while others feared it promoted vigilante justice. ABC constantly demanded reshoots to tone down the intensity and replace realistic gunplay with stylized gadgets. The studio wanted another colorful comedy, but producer William Dozier envisioned noir realism. Behind the scenes, Bruce Lee's choreography clashed with stunt coordinators who struggled to match his speed. Some American directors even slowed his movements to fit Western style, editing a decision Lee resented deeply. Critics praised his charisma, yet audiences were uncertain. Ratings ratings suffered against Batman's brighter competition, and the show was canceled after one season. Decades later, fans recognized the Green Hornet as groundbreaking. It marked the first time an Asian hero stood equal to his white counterpart on primetime television. Its failure at the time became its triumph and legacy. The Green Hornet's sleek car, the Black Beauty, and Lee's martial art precision became cultural blueprints for future heroes. In an age obsessed with spectacle, the Green Hornet remains proof that quiet determination often speaks louder than explosions. Number 10. Space Ghost, 1966. When Hanna-Barbera decided to bring superheroes into Saturday morning animation, they unleashed Space Ghost, a cosmic avenger designed by Alex Toth. Premiering in 1966, the show followed Space Ghost and his sidekicks Jan, Jace, and Blip as they patrolled distant galaxies against monstrous foes. At first, it seemed like harmless adventure, but moral groups soon targeted it. Parents complained about its eerie tone and visual intensity. The cosmic battles featured death rays, explosions, and moral ambiguity rare for children's programming. Networks censored several episodes, removing darker scenes that hinted at existential dread. Some stations even refused to air reruns, believing it was too frightening. Behind the microphone, veteran voice actor Gary Owens gave the hero authority, while animators struggled with limited budgets. Each explosion was created by recycling frames to save costs. Studio insiders whispered about burnout as artists produced dozens of episodes under grueling schedules. Critics dismissed it as shallow, but decades later, Space Ghost achieved ironic immortality. In the 1990s, the same character was resurrected in Space Ghost Coast to coast a surreal talk show parody that turned the once serious hero into an absurd cult icon. Through reinvention, Space Ghost became a metaphor for television itself, a medium that could mock its own past while honoring it. It showed that even forgotten heroes can be reborn when imagination refuses to fade. Number 9. Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, 1967. Rising from solar fire, Birdman became one of the most visually striking heroes of the 1960s. Produced by Hanna-Barbera and designed once again by Alex Toth, it centered on Ray Randall, a winged champion who drew power from the sun to defend Earth. Alongside him were three cosmic enforcers known as the Galaxy Trio, each with bizarre powers drawn from science fiction myth. Audiences were captivated yet uneasy. Some thought Birdman's dependency on sunlight mirrored addiction. Others noted the Cold War undertones in his missions against shadowy enemy nations. Censors intervened, demanding that episodes remove real-world references to nuclear energy. The series was sanitized into safer plots about aliens and monsters. Production chaos plagued the team. Animators raced to meet deadlines, reusing footage to maintain illusion of flight. The narrator's dramatic voice became a legend even as critics called the writing simplistic. Still, Birdman captured a primal sense of optimism. When Cartoon Network resurrected the character decades later in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, it transformed him into satire of bureaucracy and nostalgia. Suddenly, the forgotten icon symbolized the absurdity of adulthood itself. Birdman's journey from luminous hero to legal parody reflected how generations reinterpreted their myths. The character born from Sunfire became an eternal metaphor for rebirth adaptation and the strange immortality of forgotten dreams. Number 8. The Magic Serpent, 1966. Long before Hollywood fused superheroes with mythic fantasy, Japan delivered one of the wildest genre hybrids ever filmed, The Magic Serpent, released in 1966. A blend of samurai action, sorcery, monster battles, and heroic transformation, it introduced audiences to a young ninja prince who could morph into a giant mystical toad to battle evil warlocks and dragon-like beasts. The film mixed superhero tropes with traditional folklore decades before such mashups became mainstream. At the time of release, critics dismissed it as too strange for international audiences, yet children and fantasy lovers were mesmerized. The film's transformation sequences, achieved using miniature models, puppetry, and early tokusatsu effects, pushed the boundaries of mid-60s cinema. Some scenes were trimmed or re-edited when exported overseas, as distributors feared its darker imagery, including sorcery rituals and kaiju-style destruction, might unsettle younger viewers. Behind the scenes, the production battled tight budgets and intense shooting schedules. Special effects crews worked tirelessly to animate giant creatures using practical effects that often malfunctioned, forcing last-minute rewrites and improvised stunts. Yet the passion of the team paid off. The Magic Serpent became a cult classic. Decades later, the film resurfaced online, where its surreal charm and proto-superhero energy earned a new generation of fans. It stands today as a forgotten ancestor of modern heroic fantasy, bold, chaotic, and wonderfully imaginative. Number 7. Mighty Mouse, 1964. Revival. Though born in the 40s, Mighty Mouse stormed back into television glory in 1964 through a new series that reinvented him for a generation craving colorful absurdity. The flying rodent hero once symbolized wartime optimism, but by the mid-60s, his world reflected surreal humor and rebellious undertones. The revival faced intense scrutiny from moral watchdogs who claimed its slapstick violence went too far for children. Networks ordered heavy edits. Explosions and exaggerated punches were trimmed from episodes. Writers resisted, but budgets were too small to fight censorship. They reused earlier footage, blending old animation with new dialogue dialogue to meet production schedules. Behind the cheerful music chaos brewed. Artists complained about low pay and exhausting deadlines. Some animators were veterans of the original run, now struggling to adapt to television's new commercial format. Critics sneered, calling it outdated, yet kids adored it. Despite backlash, Mighty Mouse remained a Saturday morning favorite, symbolizing hope amid absurdity. Decades later, the character returned once more in the late 80s, reimagined by animator Ralph Bakshi, who injected surrealism and adult satire. Through every reinvention, Mighty Mouse endured, because he represented something elemental. The belief that even the smallest creature could fight overwhelming darkness. A mouse with courage became an emblem of resilience for generations who refused to bow to fear. Number 6. Spider-Man, 1967. Animated series. In 1967, a jazzy theme song declared, "Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can," and television changed forever. This was Marvel's first major leap from comic book to animated form. Produced by Grant Trey Lawrence Animation and later Ralph Bakshi, it turned a struggling comic book hero into a pop culture force. Yet the road was perilous. The first season followed the tone of the comics, but budget cuts struck hard. When Bakshi took control, he recycled backgrounds from other shows and filled episodes with surreal color palettes and moody cityscapes. The result looked psychedelic, haunting, and oddly mature. Censors pushed back against its darkness. Episodes featuring crime and despair were rewritten or shelved. Stations wanted cheerful adventure, not urban loneliness. But Bakshi's team persisted, using jazz scores and experimental angles to turn limitations into poetry. Behind the microphone, Paul Soles voiced Peter Parker, with quiet pain, capturing teenage isolation long before Hollywood embraced complexity. Despite chaotic production and meager funds, Spider-Man resonated deeply with viewers who saw their own struggles reflected in his endless fight to do good while feeling powerless. Decades later, its memes, its music, and its haunting art style became cult legend. It defined the visual language of heroism for a generation, raised on transistor radios and Saturday morning dreams. The 1967 Spider-Man did not just swing across skyscrapers, he swung across decades, embedding himself in the DNA of every superhero who followed. Number 5. Adam Ant, 1965. Deep beneath the ground in his secret laboratory lived Adam Ant, the tiniest titan of the superhero world. Premiering in 1965 under Hanna-Barbera's banner, this high-energy series turned the smallest creature imaginable into a crusader for justice. He buzzed through the air with atomic strength and patriotic zeal, shouting, "Up and Adam, Adam Ant." It looked like simple fun, yet the show carried curious undertones of Cold War symbolism. Each episode mirrored nuclear anxieties of the era. The word atomic alone unsettled network executives who worried parents might associate the hero's powers with nuclear weapons. Some episodes were pulled for revision, especially those featuring military themes. Studio memos revealed internal debates about whether to rename him entirely. Behind the scenes, animators faced punishing deadlines and reused visual loops to save costs. The character's speed made animation difficult. Veteran voice actor Howard Morris provided the voice but left mid-season after contract disputes, forcing hasty replacements. The rushed work created uneven pacing and visible continuity errors. Still, children adored Adam Ant's courage. He embodied mid-60s optimism, the belief that science could be both heroic and humane. Critics dismissed it as disposable Saturday morning fluff, yet its legacy endured. Decades later, nostalgic revivals and cameos in modern animation reaffirmed its influence. Adam Ant was proof that courage has no size limit, and that even in times of fear, humor and imagination could still fly higher than fear itself. Number 4. The New Adventures of Superman, 1966. Before Saturday mornings were packed with superheroes, The New Adventures of Superman burst onto television in 1966, delivering fast-paced animated shorts that brought the Man of Steel back into living rooms across America. Produced by Filmation, each episode was a bite-sized adventure, Superman battling alien invaders, runaway meteors, destructive robots, and cosmic catastrophes, all within a tight 7-minute format. For many children, this was their first introduction to superhero storytelling, but the show faced heavy scrutiny. Parents' groups claimed the action was too intense, even though the violence was tame by modern standards. Censors stepped in, ordering the removal of explosive impacts, collapsing buildings, and scenes where Superman's strength appeared too aggressive. Writers were constantly told to soften danger, which led to awkward edits and abrupt dialogue replacements. Behind the scenes, Filmation worked with shoestring budgets and crushing deadlines. Animators reused flight loops, recycled backgrounds, and traced over live-action footage through rotoscoping. Voice actor Bud Collyer returned from the iconic radio series, adding authority even when the visuals looked stiff. Despite all obstacles, the shorts became a childhood staple. The New Adventures of Superman proved that even limited animation could ignite imagination and laid early groundwork for the superhero boom that followed. Number 3. Batfink, 1966. He had steel wings, he had sonar radar, and he had one of the strangest superhero shows of the decade. Batfink debuted in 1966 as a parody, yet it became unintentionally profound. Created by Hal Seeger, this animated series followed Batfink and his sidekick sidekick karate as they battled eccentric villains in fast-paced 5-minute adventures. Audiences loved the humor, but critics could not decide whether it was satire or nonsense. Moral campaigners attacked it for its violent slapstick, while television censors worried its humor was too cruel for children. Episodes were chopped mercilessly, removing jokes about crime and death. Entire scenes disappeared from reruns. Behind the microphones, voice actors worked relentlessly. Frank Buxton, who voiced Batfink, improvised much of his dialogue to fill rushed animation gaps. The production team created over 100 episodes in less than 2 years, an impossible schedule that burned out the small studio. Yet, Batfink survived long enough to become legend. In later years, its mechanical sound effects and absurd pacing inspired cult admiration. Some saw it as the first self-aware superhero cartoon, anticipating modern deconstruction. The character's catchphrase, "My wings are like a shield of steel," became an anthem for resilience. Batfink proved that parody could carry truth, that laughter could mask fear, and that even cheap animation could echo forever when imagination refused to die. Number 2. The Marvel Superheroes, 1966. Before the mighty Marvel empire conquered cinema, it began humbly with a half-animated experiment called The Marvel Superheroes. Released in 1966, this syndicated television series was Marvel's first attempt to bring its comic book universe to life. It featured Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Submariner using actual comic panels that barely moved across the screen. At first, viewers were fascinated. The visuals looked primitive, yet the dialogue came directly from the comics, creating authenticity unseen at the time. But network executives were divided. Some thought it looked lazy, while others feared its war-themed storylines glorified violence. Censors ordered edits to reduce weapon imagery and patriotic scenes involving World War villains. Behind the curtains, the production faced exhaustion. To save money, each episode reused art from Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko panels. The animation team at Grant Ray Lawrence had to create over 100 episodes within months. Voices were recorded overnight. Despite the chaos, the energy was electric. These shows gave millions their first taste of the Marvel mythos. Critics dismissed it as limited animation, yet it achieved something profound. It gave voices to silent heroes. It introduced audiences to complex characters wrestling with morality and humanity. The legacy endured. Those static frames laid the groundwork for every cinematic universe that followed. The Marvel Superheroes was not smooth nor polished, but it carried the heartbeat of invention. It was proof that vision could thrive even with no budget and no safety net. Number 1. Rocket Robin Hood, 1966. In an era when superheroes ruled the skies, one Canadian studio dared to blend medieval folklore with space-age imagination. Rocket Robin Hood aired in 1966, retelling the legend of the outlaw archer in a futuristic galaxy where Sherwood Forest floated among the stars. At first, it was considered ridiculous. Critics mocked the crude animation and repetitive music, but children were hypnotized by its energy and rebellious spirit. Each episode saw Robin and his band of merry men stealing from cosmic tyrants and defying galactic lords. The moral tone echoed the counterculture movement rising around the world. Censors clashed with producers over its violence. Laser duels and explosions were toned down. Some scenes showing rebellion against authority were censored entirely by nervous networks. Yet the very thing they feared became its appeal. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. The show was animated partly in Canada and partly in New York, creating confusion in production schedules. Staff members were overworked, and budgets evaporated mid-season. Directors reused footage endlessly. Still, the result felt alive, pulsing with reckless creativity. Though forgotten by mainstream audiences, Rocket Robin Hood later gained cult status among animators. Its psychedelic colors, surreal storytelling, and strange musical cues inspired generations of creators, including Ralph Bakshi, who began his early work on the show. Rocket Robin Hood taught that even absurd dreams could ignite revolutions. It turned legend into science fiction and rebellion into art. These forgotten heroes built the foundations of everything that came after. They carried the dreams of a generation that believed the impossible could be real. Each vanished show left behind sparks that still burn in modern storytelling. Which of these 60s legends deserves to return to the spotlight? Tell us below, and remember to like, subscribe, and keep history alive.